Welcome to 8 Cubes. I'm KM Best. He's Lamby Series. He pointed at me when I said he's Lamby Series, so I'm Lamby Series now. No? Okay. We are 8 Cubes. We're here to talk about the key points in the current metagame, and we're going to start with just a basic question. Best decks in Snap right now. Give me like two. Go.
Loki with Werewolf and Loki with Werewolf and Quinjet. That's my best two. The first one has Falcon and Beast. The second one doesn't have probably has Coulson and Quinjet. But yeah, no, I really
Oh
think
my
Loki is just the
God.
top dog. And like every time people let me play Loki, even in tournaments, I hardly lose. So Loki's the best deck.
I am tempted to agree that Loki is one of the best decks. I think it probably is the best deck, but I will say for the first time in 2 months, I finally have a deck with a proactive game plan where I don't hate the Loki matchup. And I'm very happy for that. And that deck is Darkhawk Bounce. You can actually check out my most recent video on that. It'll be the video that came out yesterday on this channel. And the basic premise of Darkhawk Bounce is it's a deck that has a proactive game plan against Loki, but it's full of just like complete crap. So if they Loki you, they really need to hit your Darkhawk or your Chavez. And if they don't hit your Darkhawk or your Chavez, they are playing the worst cards of all time. Just complete garbage. And you get to play your complete garbage better because you're the Falcon Beast deck. And they will likely, even if they are the Falcon Beast deck, have used it multiple times already. And if they're the Quinjet deck, they get basically nothing out of it because your cards all mostly cost one anyway. So I think that's a nice angle to take right now. I also think there are several other viable strategies right now. I've been experimenting with other Darkhawk lists, like the mid-range stuff, and I found the bounce one to be a little bit better. But there's still stuff to be done with Miss Marvel. I do think that Miss Marvel has a unique weakness into Loki decks, though, where it's just like Miss Marvel decks that are built around being a deck that curves out with powerful cards below rate, or above rate cards, I should say. That's bad into Loki because they just end up being more above rate for the Loki deck. But I do think that their Loki right now is as weak as it has been in probably a very long time, I think. Now that Elsa's out of the picture, we're relying on Werewolf. It's genuinely more of a normal deck than it is something that is totally unfair the way it used to be. And I think that's a good thing. So clearly we disagree on how good Loki is currently, because I put on this, is Loki done? And what I meant by that is not, is it no longer the best deck? What I meant by that is, can you be 100% sure it's the best deck, just straight up, no questions? Are you positive about that right now?
Right. So on that question, I want to say that yes, I still think it's
Okay.
like the best deck because I feel like the amount of player agency you have as the Loki deck is still the highest when it comes to any deck in the game. So I think as long as you understand the matchup, like I don't think there is an actual hard counter to Loki outside of Cerebro 3, which has been that way for like the longest time. My personal experience with Loki is that like because I play this game a lot, right? So like I tend to know the matchups of like
Yeah.
and almost every deck. So I think if you know a matchup with a Loki deck, you have so much control as to how to beat the matchup. I'm not saying that you always win. Like gonna throw out an example right there, which is the destroy matchup. You know that a lot of the time it's like you gotta get the big hand size, Loki the null and death, then you win from there. Like you just know these kind of things. Not trying to say that like you will win because you don't always win, but like you know how to win. And Loki has a lot of situations whereby if you know how to win, you can work towards it. It's not like certain decks whereby if you know you're dead, you're dead. There's zero outs. Loki always seems to be able to find a way. Whether is it Lokiing their cards to play it better. In the case of the Miss Marvel deck, right? Like you said, the Miss Marvel deck is basically effectively another Thanos deck which you love to Loki because it's all awesome cards, right? It's 5 energy Alaya, 5 energy Doom, 3 energy Miss Marvel. You love to Loki this kind of stuff. So there are a lot of decks out there that are just very weak to getting their cards stolen because you play it better. And there are also a lot of decks that like you don't play the Loki against them because you get trash, right? Like versus the Hawk Bounce deck. And because you know this, you set up in a different way. Like maybe you Loki them with the intention of taking the beast. So you set up with your little one cost stuff on the board. So taking the beast on turn 5 lets you have an insane turn 6, stuff like that. So I feel like Loki gives you the agency to do all these kind of things. Where other decks, they have a very more fixed game plan whereby it's like more solved. So I think Loki is still the best deck just because of its flexibility. It's in no way easier to pilot, obviously, but like it's still like the one with the most like control over your game plan.
I just feel like we're approaching a critical mass of like decks in the metagame that Loki does not instantly beat, right? You name check Destroy, and I was going to bring that up because it's like Destroy is a very popular deck right now. There's Darkhawk Bounce out there. There's discard decks, and it's like these are not like decks that insta beat Loki, but they're also not decks where Loki is like what we're used to it being, right? And so there's like eventually a point at which people will have figured out like, okay, I can play this deck and it won't instantly lose to Loki. And when the entire metagame is that, you kind of start to wonder, maybe it might be time to play a different deck. And that's sort of what I was trying to get at with this topic, where it's like, I don't know if Loki isn't the best deck anymore, but we are swiftly approaching a point at which basically every deck anyone plays has had 2 months to sort of react and mold itself around Loki. And the whole metagame has sort of gotten to a point where it's very unlikely, unless, you know, Miss Marvel comes out and a bunch of people want to try playing her, that you run into matchups where Loki just instantly wins anymore. Like, it is very much a metagame that is hostile to him in a sort of passive sense, which is to say, the free wins are basically all gone. Let's take a victory lap, shall we? Yep. The overwhelming reaction to Mobius getting reverted was one of two things. There were people who were like me, who were like, it's a good thing they reverted this because that's the effect people paid for, and that's good. And also, I don't even know if he's going to be that good at 3 power, at 3 cost. And then there were the people who were saying, oh my god, they killed Negative and Sarah. How dare you? Oh, the metagame, we had 1 week of fun. Anyway, Mobius is back. His win rate is negative. His play rate is under 7%. He's not very good at 3 cost, is he?
Yeah, honestly, I was personally very sure that Mobius will see a lot less play just because he was at 3 costs. Because, like, at 2 costs previously, he was just very free. It's a huge difference. It's very interesting. Like, 2 costs and 3 costs, same effect. But the thing is, Marvel Snap is like, once again, 6-turn game, whereby it just doesn't fit nicely into your curve anymore. Like, Mobius used to be like so free. On turn 2, you just drop him. But being able to only drop him on turn 3 is like severe opportunity cost for setting up a game-winning plan. Like, I'm just gonna like throw out random decks here. Like, Thanos wants to play Time Stone or Lockjaw on turn 3. Like, Lockdown decks want to play Storm on turn 3. There's like so many cards that you want to do on turn 3 that help you win. Whereas Mobius is a card that helps you not lose. And to play a card that helps you not lose on turn 3 instead of turn 2 is like a world of difference. You have like 6 turns in a game, right? So it's a world of difference when Mobius costs 1 more, and that 1 more is literally the turn you set up to win. Mobius sets up to help you not lose. So it's kind of only good when it comes out without opportunity cost, and at 3 it's a lot of opportunity cost.
One of the other things I think people really missed about Mobius as a 2-cost card was how good it was when Elsa and Angela were making up for the lack of power that it had. Yes. And Mobius isn't like necessarily not a powerful card. It was a 2/3. That's a good number. But without Elsa and Angela there, just having a body is less valuable. Like, Elsa put a premium on playing cards onto the board. It didn't really matter what they were. Yep. She'd pay off the power later. And Mobius was extremely powerful in this context because he's one of the best 2-cost cards in the game. But if he's a 3-cost card, even if that was still around, it wouldn't necessarily fit in there. And it's not around. They killed Angela, they killed Elsa, and like that whole archetype of decks, like, people forget, that was like every deck in the metagame was like Angela, Elsa, Kitty, Jeff. That was the major complaint. People were mad that all the decks were kind of doing the same thing. Whether it was Bounce, whether it was Loki, whether it was Darkhawk, they were all doing the same thing. And that's what people were mad about. And it's like, the fact that they were doing the same thing was not Mobius's fault. It was Angela and Elsa's. And Angela and Elsa made any 2-cost cards, see Luke Cage, basically a free inclusion in all of those decks because they would carry the power. And now that's not happening. You're paying an actual cost for putting the guy in the deck. Angela and Elsa aren't there to carry him anymore. And since he's not an on reveal, Werewolf can't carry him anymore. I don't even know if he'd be that good if he was a 2/3 right now. Like, so much of his play rate was being carried by Angela Elsa shells. We never saw him out of that context. I don't expect them to do this, but I kind of wonder if they just put him at 2/2, would he even be playable? Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, is that even a card you're going to play?
Well, I do think if he's 2 costs again, I think a lot more people will actually consider him, like simply just because that he fits the curve a bit more. But no, I also agree that like the fact that Elsa and Angela were like allowing basically you play Elsa and Angela in almost anything, and then like you just splash cards that like
Yep.
can be played on the board, and then Elsa and Angela just pays them off just cause it's extra stats. So I kind of get it as well. Yeah.
Let's talk about Darkhawk Bounce. I've had this deck on my tier list, I think, since the last tier list that I did. But I thought it was like a sort of fringe tier 2-ish type thing. And after playing with it a little bit, I've become convinced that like the deck is actually legitimately powerful. It has taken 2 months for me to say this, but I actually have a deck with a proactive game plan that plays a normal game of Marvel Snap that I don't hate playing into Loki now. And I part of it is I'm worried I'm overrating it because I'm so happy that I have that. Like, it's been so long since I've been able to say that like, oh my god, I have a deck with a game plan that when I play it into Loki, I don't feel like I instantly lose the game. Holy crap, that's crazy. So, do you think I'm overrating it? I know that a lot of the work on this deck came out of your community, actually. So, let me know what you know about this list. You mentioned before the show, which I think this is hilarious. There's a guy in your chat who's going around telling everyone to play Shadow King. I don't know who that guy is, but I want to give a shout out to that guy because he's right. You should be playing Shadow King in that deck. Absolutely. I had the exact same conversation with Otion. He was like, yeah, I've been playing this for a while. And I was like, you're playing Shadow King, right? And he's like, yeah, kind of. It's like, no, you have to play Shadow King. You have to play Shadow King right now. He's so good. He's so good. So shout out to that guy, whoever he is.
Right, so yeah, Otion Otion is part of the people that we've tested with for this Honk Bounce deck, and like the Shadow King guy is from my Discord. He's called Telly Dead Man. Shout out to Yu-Gi-Oh! Telly Dead. But anyway, so basically, he's been going around telling us to play this list with Shadow King. So I tried it myself, and why this Shadow King works is because it's actually perfect. It's weirdly perfect. So what you want to do with this Honk Bounce deck is you just play your 1-cost cards, right? Just play your Widows, your Korgs, your whatevers, your Hoods. You bounce it all back with Beasts. They cost 0. And then you have a werewolf sitting down there. So on the final turn, you do this Sarah-esque thing whereby you're behind on initiative. Your werewolf doesn't get Shang-Chi or Shadow King or whatever. And then you just spam all your 0-cost, 1-cost cards and a Hawk. And then what does that mean? You have 2 energy left, right? So there we go with the Shadow King. It's perfect. It's 4 plus 2 plus any amount of 1-cost zeros that you have in your hand. So and then your wolf just goes bounce, 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 bounce. On one lane, the Hawk on the other lane, and Shadow King wherever you need it to be. And then you just like you do the Sarah thing, but you're actually putting a lot of points, regardless of what the matchup is, right? Because like Sarah used to be like a reverse points. I need to shank something, I need to end something. And one lane I have a monkey. But now you have coverage on everything because you have the Hawk, the SK, and you have the wolf. So this deck I think actually is a very well built, good Marvel Snap deck. Like that has player agency because on turn 6 you do the Sarah thing, but you don't care what your opponent's deck is playing. You still can do the Sarah thing and put points on the board and see where you want to put points on the board. So I think this deck actually makes a lot of sense to be tier 1. With regard to the whole Loki conversation just now, I do think this deck is actually decently well placed into Loki for sure. It's just that I think maybe because I know this deck so well that when I play Loki against this deck, I think I mentioned it a bit earlier in the video, but I set up such that when
the
I play
beast
Loki
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I set up such that when I play Loki against them, right, I have 1-cost nonsense littered across the board so that I can beast or falcon it and do my crazy final turn with the werewolf as well. So that's one way to approach playing against the Dark Hawk Bounce, but that doesn't mean that it's not good into Loki. I think the
Yeah.
general idea of like giving them like a bunch of weenies that aren't like always super impactful when they Loki you is also quite important. And their Dark Hawk on average, even if they get it, is like on average worse than yours, right? Because you've put rocks and Widow's Bite stuff and into their deck already. So your Hawk on average will be a little bit worse. So I think this deck, yeah, if you don't want to play like Loki related stuff, you can play this Dark Hawk Bounce deck. And you should be fine against the average Loki player, right? And you should also be fine into like many other matchups because it's I mean, you can really do your own thing, and as long as you don't get literally Sandman, you can probably like eke out wins against like
Yeah.
quite a bunch of things. And like people like to ask me this question: what's the best non-Loki werewolf deck? I think it's this.
I think it is too. And one card that I was like overwhelmingly impressed by was Black Widow.
Yes.
Who, for some reason, is just like insane right now. Like, I don't even know why. It's just like, if you can beast a Black Widow, that's a snap like 75% of the time. Denying 2 draws is disgusting. Huge. And the only times when it's actually bad are like when your Loki opponent is like, I'm gonna Loki because they're gonna play that beasted Black Widow. Give me that guy, and then I'll get an extra card out of your deck with it. But that's basically it. I will say it does kind of trick you into doing some stuff. I lost 2 50-50s yesterday trying to put a Black Widow into my opponent's hand so their Dracula would discard the Widow's Bite and it hit Apocalypse both times. I think it was the right play, but you will do stuff like that with Black Widow too, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think that if you don't want to be a Loki deck and you want to be a little bit of a hipster and you want to not feel embarrassed about it, this is a good choice.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to this, which is that it's not just the Widow's Bite stopping draws or like 2 draws. It's also, it stops draws and then you put rocks in the deck, right? So you stop draws, and then when they eventually do draw, there's a chance that they don't actually even draw anything substantial, like a rock. So
your high roll with this deck involves your opponent only drawing cards like 3 times per game.
Yep.
Like, that's what it looks like. Next up, I have gotten some questions recently about how people seem to think that Miss Marvel is a little bit stronger than she should be. And I kind of wanted to address that because my opinion is that Miss Marvel is closer to the Nebula tier of Battle Pass cards than she is to the Loki Elsa tier. But also, the more I think about it, the more I think she's probably on the upper end of that Nebula tier, which is to say, I think she's within the acceptable range, but she is quite strong. And I think, is that the right place for a Battle Pass card to be is kind of an interesting conversation, because it's like, all right, that is a really strong card. If someone in like Pool 1 gets a hold of a Miss Marvel, they're going to have a huge advantage over the other Pool 1 players. That's something to be concerned with, I think, especially because Miss Marvel, unlike something like Nebula, is so strong in ways that are basically unconditional as long as you build your deck in the right way. So it's a little bit interesting to consider that, right? Like, I think that Miss Marvel is probably about as strong as Loki or Elsa if you're buying her in Pool 1, honestly. Like, she is ridiculous there.
I actually think, go
on. No.
Yeah, no, I just want to say I actually think that Miss Marvel is better than Loki and Elsa for early pool players, because it's more basic, right? Like, okay, just gonna say it quickly, like, Loki requires so much matchup knowledge outside of just stealing stuff and playing them for cheap, but it requires so much matchup knowledge and timing. Elsa requires you board space management. Miss Marvel requires you to play her in the center. So, like I think in terms of like ease of playability and strength, Miss Marvel is really good for lower pool players. Just want to get that out of the way first.
Yeah, no, I think that's like an interesting dynamic, right? Because the previous cards, I think Elsa and Loki were obscenely strong, but they scaled with play skill a little bit. And Miss Marvel like reverse scales with play skill. The better the people you play against are, the worse she gets, right? Because she's a little more telegraphed, a little more obvious. Whereas like the worse the people you're playing against are, the more overpowering she is. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see a significant perception gap on Miss Marvel based on where people are on the collection track. Like if you're like below 1500 CL and you see a Miss Marvel, you're just like, oh my God, this game is pay to win. And I think that's just a very interesting concept. I never thought about it in that way before, but after getting people asking that, I figured the only way they'd be asking that is if they're low CL, right? Like that's how you end up thinking that she's OP, because she probably actually is when you're looking at a low CL situation. And I just thought that was a really interesting card game design conundrum, because if you make a card that's too strong but complex, then it might not get nerfed properly, right? But if you make a card that's too strong but simple, then it might be too overpowering in the early pools. Just another interesting situation where Marvel Snap's collection system interacts with the monetization in a way that is different for people at the beginning and the end of their collection tracks. And I think that's a little bit fascinating because other card games don't necessarily have to deal with that. I want to talk about combo decks. And what do I mean by combo decks? Well, that's what I'm trying to get at here. I want to officially name this archetype of deck. We're going to call them combo decks for now. We might come up with a better name later, but what we're talking about is a deck like Mr. Negative. We're talking about a deck like Phoenix Force. And the main defining characteristic of the deck is that it is good when it does the thing, and it is totally unplayable when it does not. Combo decks have been around in metagames ever since the beginning of Marvel Snap, with varying success. Right now, hella powerful combo deck. A Mr. Negative is still around. Shout out to Mobius not being very playable. There is Phoenix Force, which is one of the best combo decks in the game, I would say, right now. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, what are your thoughts on the consistent presence of combo decks in the metagame and how they match up with the more typical quote-unquote best decks, which tend to be these sort of mid-rangey interactive point style decks? Because I think one of the interesting things I've noticed is traditionally these mid-rangey point style decks are good into the combo decks because they're playing things like Enchantress, Shang-Chi, Rogue, things like that. But post Loki, the Loki style of mid-rangey decks are actually the kind of decks that get beaten by combo decks. And I think that's an interesting dynamic to note, because especially Phoenix Force is like a deck that arose as a counter to Loki, so they would just get complete garbage out of it, and if you executed your plan, you would win anyway. What are your thoughts on the role of combo decks in the metagame and how that's changed from the sort of Zabu, Shang-Chi, Enchantress style of mid-range being the dominant deck to Loki being the dominant deck?
Right, so firstly, I want to get it out of the way again. I don't call these decks combo decks. I call these decks NIW decks, which is like non-interactive winning decks. Basically,
it's the same thing.
No, because I truly believe, right? Because I came from other card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, Hearthstone, and whatever. I truly believe that there's actually no combo deck in Marvel Snap because it's honestly just these decks are just non-interactive decks because it's not really a combo.
When you think, hold on. When you say combo, you're thinking of an OTK, aren't you?
Yes. I'm thinking of like bam, 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 GG. But like this kind of things, like in Marvel Snap, it feels like there's no real like combo. It's just two cards. Phoenix Force is destroy something, Phoenix Force. To me, that's not really a combo. That's like non-interactivity because you just die. But yeah, it's like Modok Hela, die. Okay, so anyway, I think these kind of decks traditionally are a bit weaker into the mid-rangey style decks because they get like there's a lot of choke points, right? By choke points, I mean like things that stop them from working. So the mid-rangey decks can play a bunch of just stats and the card that chokes you out, like a Cosmo, like a armor. So that's why I think the mid-rangey decks do a bit better because you get to play like just random cards in random places and the game-winning choke point card versus like the specific non-interactive deck. So I think over like time, I haven't really seen a Mr. Negative come on top in tournaments. Not much. Haven't really seen like a Phoenix Force win a tournament yet or something like that because these decks are a bit too paper being flimsy, you know, like blown away with the wind kind of decks. So I think these might be the problems with like the combo decks that we are talking about. Loki is a bit interesting because Loki versus this decks, one of your better things to do is just slam Loki on 4, right? And then just play the cheap stuff. But the problem with the combo decks is that when you grab their cheap stuff or you grab their stuff, it's all like setup pieces, right? And like the setup pieces don't help you set up at all because it doesn't work with your deck. So I think the way to approach it with Loki, from what I've been doing personally, is that like I think versus this kind of decks, you only really Loki them for two things. One, to make your collector absolutely fat. And second thing is, I guess, if they run one particular thing that can help your deck. Like I've been playing against like this Phoenix Force deck from Jet recently, and he runs Doctor Strange, right? So a lot of the time I will Loki on turn 4 so I can like I can Doctor Strange my collector into another lane. That like this is like literally the only thing that I grab from them. Or if they play Chavez, right? Some of these combo decks play Chavez. So you grab the Chavez, it's the best thing you can grab. So like it's a perspective thing, I guess.
One thing I wanted to note is you say that these kind of decks have never won tournaments, and I think you're actually off base on that because the best example of this non-interactive win deck has won a tournament, and we helped it happen when we told Browde to play Galactus.
Oh right, true. That was that guy.
we did that.
That was that guy. Yes.
And that is the epitome of like when these decks are good, where you just look at a metagame and you're like, no one plays any of the stuff that beats this. And then when that happens, you can actually just win an entire tournament, right?
Ooh.
Like there is some pedigree for it, like where it's just like, all right, well, look, if no one's playing the stuff that's going to beat me, I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna win. So I think that's a decent dynamic to have, because it's not like it's won a million tournaments or anything like that, but it does show that this kind of gameplay, this kind of style of gameplay can work, right? Like, there were a bunch of people who brought hella stuff to the Rainbow Snap Clash, right? Like, there were a bunch of people who brought Johnson brought like an ongoing living tribunal. Yeah, like this kind of stuff does have a place, and I think it's good that it has a place. And I also think the way in which the dynamic got a little bit inverted from the mid-range decks policing them to the mid-range decks kind of losing to them, but other decks policing them, I think that's a pretty cool consequence of Loki.
Yeah, on that note, since we talk about Rainbow Snap Clash, Browder is in the top 8 with a lineup that I gave him right now, so there's a good chance that he's gonna win again. I'm hopeful.
PayPal him
Yeah,
$10.
PayPal.
PayPal
Yep.
you $10. Yeah,
That's right.
You gotta pay a finder's fee, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, no, we're recording this on a Sunday, so by the time this comes out, you'll know if Browday won or not. Please put $10 in the comments if he did, and make sure that he sends Lamby $10.
Yes.
Let's talk about Gladiator. 3 cost, 7 power, pulls a card from your opponent's deck to the board. If it is smaller than Gladiator, it will die. If it is bigger than Gladiator, it will stay there. Note that it happens after ongoings and on reveals take effect. So you pull a Darkhawk, Gladiator's probably not going to be able to kill it. You pull a Null, Gladiator, probably won't be able to kill it. You pull a White Tiger, they're still getting that on reveal effect. Mm-hmm. So Gladiator is at a 3/7 premium stats with a potential significant discount, but there's a potential upside here too, because one of the things that I like thinking about is one of the major things that people compare Gladiator to is Yondu, right? Like, oh, even if it works, it's still just 3/7 Yondu, right? I do want to say 3/7 Yondu is like way more playable than 1/2 Yondu. Part of the reason that Yondu sucks is that a 1-cost card is not putting enough of a body on the board for it to really matter, right? If 1-cost cards had bodies that mattered, something like Blade would be super overpowered. When you look at the rate on Blade, you pay 1 for 3. When you look at the rate on Magneto, you pay 1 for 2. It's a 6/12, right? Like, but if you made a 6/18, that would be insanely strong. If 6-cost cards had the rate that 1-cost cards do, that would be insanely strong. And the fact that they don't, like we saw what a 6/18 was like with High Evo Hulk, they had to nerf it. Like, the fact that they don't is a demonstration of the issue, which is when a card doesn't have much of an impact on the board on its own, there's an opportunity cost to including it in your deck because you are using up a valuable card slot on it. If Yondu was a 3/7, it would be legitimately a great card in Destroy, as is it's a marginal card in Destroy. So I do think people underrate just how important it is to have a big body on a card when they're looking at this. Like, if it literally was 3/7 Yondu, I would say this is actually a good card. It's not 3/7 Yondu. It's got some significant other downside on it. What do you think about Gladiator?
Okay, so there's this card in Hearthstone called Dirty Red, which when you play it, it's a 2/6 in Hearthstone. You play it, you drop a card from your opponent's hand onto the board. Doesn't have the destroy effect, but like in a similar vein. So I like this style of card. Less in Marvel Snap, of course, because you don't have that much time to interact with like free cards that you give your opponent, right? Like, imagine you give them a free big thing that doesn't die, like you pull out the Hulk from their deck or something like that. Yeah, that's a bit scary. But 3/7 firstly premium stats, yes. Ultimate upside is like, I'm just gonna use like the Loki. You pull Loki, you pull Collector, you pull Werewolf, bum. Disgusting, right?
Kill him.
You pull Doom, a bit sad, honestly. but like a bit sad. But like, one thing I think Gladiator people need to realize also is that it kind of gives Shang-Chi insane use case, because the thing is it curves 3/7 into Shang. 3/7 into Shang. Like, it gives you always a Shang target. Okay, not always. It gives you very often a Shang target, because if it's not a Shang target, it dies to the Gladiator. Unless it's 8 or 9 stats or Doom, which is horrible. But like, I think Gladiator is difficult to evaluate straight up because it really is meta dependent. And like, there needs to be more upside to pulling a random thing than a downside to pulling a random thing. So if the meta is all high Evo Hulk decks, then I will never play Gladiator. But if the meta has a lot of Loki, then I think I'm very incentivized to play Gladiator in my random good cards with a Shang-Chi deck, or something.
Yeah.
Like, so I think Gladiator is a it's definitely not busted, but it's definitely reliable in the correct metas. Like versus like let's say it's a three deck meta whereby generally 90% of the cards are not bigger than 7, right? You get free kills on your opponent's hard carries. Like imagine in that Angela Bishop or like Elsa
Yep.
meta, you play Gladiator. It's an insane card because like most of the time you are pulling a premium piece that dies to Gladiator. So I will get this card for sure. I will chuck it in some stats deck with a Shang-Chi and hopefully don't get screwed over. Yeah, that's my
Yep.
current iteration of the deck. It's not okay. I just want to get it out there first. New card doesn't mean you build a deck around a new card. Okay, guys, this doesn't make sense. You don't build a Gladiator deck. Okay, no. Anyone that posts I made an insane Gladiator deck, I'm not buying it. Or like if you play a deck that fits Gladiator to kill like a Loki deck, I get it. But no, you're not making a Gladiator based deck. I highly doubt it.
The Dirty Rat comparison is where I went to first, because the first time I saw this card, I read it as pulling from hand, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's busted! That's like the best card in the game."
That's more
But
powerful.
it's not a card that, yeah, that'd be so ins. I don't know what you'd have to put that effect at. Like, could you put that at 3/4 and have it be okay?
Yes.
If it pulled from hand and fought, like that would be insane. I feel like, but at pulling from deck, it's legitimately much worse. I wish it was Dirty Rat. It would be like insanely busted if it was Dirty Rat effect plus a fight. That would be unbelievable.
Agreed.
But it's not. And so we have the current iteration of Gladiator, who I probably will also be picking up, but if I weren't a content creator, I would be waiting like the full week to figure out if he was even close to playable, I think.
Yeah, the card is super meta dependent. So like if the meta shifts in a direction whereby it doesn't get the best users, it's easily cuttable from every deck. But like I said, like if you get collectors, Lokis, werewolves, you would want to play this every single time.
You think every single time? Like,
I mean,
I just feel like sometimes it's such a high cost to include a card that doesn't synergize with the rest of your deck in it.
I mean, like in a normal stats mid-range deck versus a Loki deck, like there's no downside to playing this against a Loki deck, right? There's absolutely no downside.
You want to know what I want to play him in?
What?
I want to play. No, this is my Gladiator cook. This is what I want to. This is what I want to play him in.
Okay.
I want to go turn 3 Gladiator, turn 4 Miss Marvel, turn 5 Leech, turn 6 Doctor Doom. I want to play Leech Leader.
Yeah,
that's what I want to do.
Degenerate. I actually have a Miss Marvel leader deck, which I might be posting soon. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. I want to be doing Miss Marvel Leech Doom with this guy. That's what I want to be doing. Where it's just like, here's 1,000,000 points. Go deal with it. Go deal with it without having the ability to play cards. You don't get to play any cards this game. That's what I want to play.
Kind of deck, yeah.
Finally, I want to talk about the idea of a metagame cycle and giving people credit for making smart decisions. And what I mean by that is an opinion that I see often is something along the lines of, people just copy content creators and don't really think for themselves, and that's how the meta moves. It's not because people are responding to incentives in their gameplay, it's because people are just copying people. And I think that there is a degree to which people copy content creators, but I don't think people would be copying content creators if the decks they were playing didn't work, right? Like, the reason a lot of that stuff happens is because the decks people are playing tend to work. They tend to be, accurate estimations of the metagame and generally successful when that happens. So I think a lot of people who don't understand the context of why something might be good now as opposed to 2 months ago look at it and say, oh, but I was playing this 2 months ago. And it's like, all right, look, 2 months ago, it wasn't right to play this for reasons X, Y, and Z. Now, for reasons X, Y, and Z, in a completely different context, completely different metagame, it is right to play this. And I just think that there needs to be a little bit more attention paid to the context of situations where certain choices that were not rewarded previously are being rewarded currently. And I think that that is something that is going to be one of the biggest level up moments you can have as a player, which is realizing why someone is making a choice to do something. Because to be honest with you, it's almost never just random chance. It's always like something that's pretty well thought out. When a high level player is like, I need to try this thing instead, it's usually to answer some specific situations that they have been caught in. And the fact that those situations are common now and weren't 2 months ago is the reason why something might be good now and not 2 months ago. What are your thoughts on this?
All right, so actually what you said makes a lot of sense, and I talked about it very briefly in another place before. But like basically, good players like myself, like good player, good deck builder. People follow my decks because like a lot of the time there's a reason why I do something, right? That like it's not just for fun. There's like an actual reason. I think one reason towards like being able to be ahead of the meta in the meta cycle and making good deck building decisions is you never really discard an idea. Like I feel like what you said about the whole like certain ideas can be reused from the past to the future and it's good now and bad then. It's very important because like to be a good deck builder and to be like ahead of the meta, you always need to compartmentalize your ideas such that they are somewhere in your brain but they are never fully thrown away. Because like you remember there was a period that like Legion was great, right? Because like game breaking effect. Then Elsa became a thing and then it was punishing to play a 5/7 even though Legion is a good card. Then Legion gets pushed to the back burner a bit. But then now maybe if the meta slows down a bit, Legion can come back again. Like you can't really like say that this card sucks or this card is good. Or I was doing this like last month and why was no one doing it? Because last month your idea was not great, right? It's very simple. But your idea is good now. And if we pick up on it first, we will popularize it and then some people will follow it. And it's not really like making new ideas out of thin air. It's actually the correct way of looking at it when it comes to meta cycle is using the right ideas at the right time. It doesn't have to be new. There's no way it has to be new. It's Marvel Snap. You can't always have something new. But you can bring back ideas at the right time. And if you are that person that brings back ideas at the right time, it's actually good enough because not everybody can bring back ideas at the right time. Everyone can have a lot of ideas, but if you bring back the right idea at the right time, you define the meta, you break the meta. So breaking the meta is not really about like making the best new bam out of nowhere deck. It's really bringing back the right idea at the right time to complement whatever is around or like beat whatever is currently around.
Yeah, I feel like people think of best deck as like something that exists in a vacuum, and it's kind of the opposite of that. Like,
True.
best deck is like the best 12 cards in the game. It beats everything, but nothing beats everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, the whole point is that you beat what you play, not everything. You beat what you play against. It doesn't matter if you beat everything. What matters is you beat the people you match up against.
Yes.
And that is what good deck building rewards and good timing on your ideas rewards.
Agreed.
All right, y'all. That's going to be it from us. We are 8 Cubes. He is Lamby Series. I am KM Best. You can catch both of us on Twitch and, of course, on YouTube here. Remember to subscribe here and on Lamby's channel. Do the like button thing. Press the bell. Do they still do the bell? I hope they do the bell. Do that. And I will see you in the next one. Lamby, take us out.
And with that, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and if you like our videos, follow us on our channels as well. We will see you guys really, really soon. Bye-bye.